Hi, Krishna, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today I'm taking another question from a viewer. I thought that this question would make a great one for recording. And someone sent this to me a while ago, and I've been meaning to do it for a while, but they just asked, what are the different types of yoga, and could you explain them? So in Bhakti, the founder Acharya of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, that is the Bhakti yogi who brought Krishna consciousness and bhakti to the West in a really big way during the 60s. His name was A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. His way of categorizing the different types of yoga and explaining them is going to be unique, in some ways to the way that Bhakti Yoga sees all the other types of yogas. I say that just to be fair because it could be confusing if you were to go and look this up and say, you're looking at the different types of yoga from the standpoint of a practitioner who might be fully devoted to jnana yoga and sees that as the highest path of yoga. So in Bhakti, we see Bhakti as the highest path of yoga, and so the definition of the different types of yoga will relate back to that prioritization. That's where our value lies. It's in Bhakti. But Krishna also lays out the different types of yoga and clearly also exalts bhakti above the others in the Bhagavad Gita, and so it is not without it's not without scriptural, historical basis that we have this very famous text that delineates the different kinds of yoga and basically exalts bhakti over all the others, while also honoring and glorifying the other forms of yoga as well in their own ways. So anyway, in the Gita, there's also going to be slightly different, depending on who you read, there's going to be slightly different ways of breaking down how Krishna divides the different types of yoga. But the basic three, or you could say even four, that all go together are going to be Ashtanga Yoga, sometimes called the mystical eightfold path of yoga, Karma Yoga, which Srila Prabhupada kind of camped Ashtanga Yoga in with Karma Yoga, so they're sort of the same thing, and I'll explain that in a minute. Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. And you maybe hear different types of yoga like Kriya Yoga or Raja Yoga and different things like that, but more or less those other types of yoga that you're going to hear would probably be fit into one of these categories, or maybe a blend of some of the categories. So let's just talk about them. Bhakti Yoga is, of course, the yoga of, it's a descending type of yoga, whereas other types of yoga have to do with the effort of the practitioner ascending toward some state of realization that we broadly or generically call enlightenment. In Bhakti, it's a descending process. What we're interested in doing is basically putting ourselves in position as lovers, servants, devotees, worshipers of God to receive the mercy and grace of God that flows downward, because there's a sense that not only are we not capable of perfecting ourselves and becoming God, but we wouldn't want to, because what a Bhakta is really interested in is the relationship with God, which is why in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Arjuna are best friends. It's about their friendship, really. It's about, and progressively as Arjuna asks questions to his friend, who is God, God gives him the answers that he not only can use to progress in yoga, but ultimately become closer to Krishna. And that's the goal, really, is not it's not about some personal level of realization or achievement as much as it is a relational goal, if it can even be called that. Just like in a marriage, the goal is to be close and to love more and to serve one another and to be brought together more deeply in that service. So that's bhakti, and it's thought that we don't do that. We don't ascend through effort. That in practice, we practice loving God in all these different ways, but that the benefit or realization that we achieve as a result of that is coming from the mercy and grace of God, not through something that we've achieved. So that's bhakti in a nutshell. You could lots of, thousands of years worth of tradition talking about what bhakti is. So I'm just trying to offer like a really brief summary as I've understood it so far. So jnana yoga is going to be it's a yoga of the mind. So in jnana we try to distinguish between spirit and matter. So for example, if you catch yourself thinking, I'm only happy depending on whether or not I get this job, or I'm only happy depending upon whether or not this person, decides they want to love me and go out with me, or I only am happy if I'm famous or whatever. In jnana yoga, we're learning to be more discerning and discriminating intellectually, to say that is illusion, that is illusion. Those things are not real. They're not the truth. So jnana is in a sense scientific and very intellectual, and it's about this phrase that's used in the Vedic tradition, neti neti, meaning like not this, not that. And so jnana yoga is the practice of learning to be more discerning and discriminating intellectually as to what is real and what isn't. And by doing that, it's a via negativa. It's a way of slicing away mentally at illusion. But one of the reasons that in bhakti we don't believe that jnana can take you all the way there is like in the same way that you're dating. Let's say you're on one of those dating apps and you're looking at the profiles of people and how they're, pitching themselves to you as an eligible partner, and you're going, nope, not that one, nope, not that one, nope. Well, you can really refine and understand what you're looking for and understand what's real and what isn't by that kind of discernment practice. But ultimately, we're still looking for a love relationship to fulfill us, so discerning about what isn't real can get us closer to knowing what is real. But in bhakti, we say you still have to, at last, you still have to step into the arms of the lover. You still have to give your heart. But it's important that we develop gyan. Bhakti is not gyan averse, because in bhakti, as the Sri Ishopanishad says, one has to learn the sacred science of loving God alongside of understanding all of the illusions and nescience and darkness of the world, so that way, because you can't really progress if you're getting caught up in illusion, right? So jnana goes along with bhakti. We say that it's a servant of bhakti, where you can know what you don't like on the dating app, and that's good, because that'll get you closer to the real deal. But you still eventually have to find a lover and then fall in love and love. So that's how bhakti relates to gyan. And a gyan, someone who's very deeply committed to gyan, is going to have a slightly different take on what gyan is and why it's useful. And one of the main things to recognize is that many people who practice jnana yoga are going to think that the idea of a personal soul and a personal God that are independent entities that can enter into this infinitely unique loving relationship is an illusion, and that there is only God, that there is no self and God, that there is no soul and God, that there are no such distinctions. And so by cutting away at the falseness of even the idea of an individual separate soul, one will eventually come closer to this all-pervading singular monistic truth. And in bhakti, we reject that line of thinking, because the scriptures are very clear from the Vedas through the Upanishads down to the Puranas and the Gita, that the soul is real and is an emanation of God, that it is both the same as God and fundamentally different at exactly the same time. So we don't believe that the world is an illusion. We don't believe that differences between things like you and me, that I am you and you are me, and there's absolutely actually no distinction between us. In bhakti, we don't believe that that's true. So jnana yogi will sometimes, be cutting away at this illusion, because they're trying to get down to also to this sense that everything is actually God, and that any sense of distinction or difference is an illusion. So they're practicing this like mental jujitsu all the time, being like, this distinction, that distinction isn't real, there's no duality, etc. And in bhakti, again, we believe that distinctions are real, and that the important distinction is to see the difference between things existing in relationship to God or not. So in that sense, jnana is really helpful. But like I said, it's like saying, oh, this isn't a real relationship. This isn't the real relation. This, but then you still have to jump in and say, this is the real relationship, and put your heart into it. And so that's a little bit of an explanation. And again, I'm such a neophyte with this stuff. So this is my best understanding. Then there's Ashtanga Yoga, and this is maybe the most ascensionalist stereotyped view that you'll ever get. It's the yogi meditating in a cave, trying to gradually reach themselves up through effort, through breathing, through practices of asana and pranayam, and purities and purification and austerities and so forth. And it's kind of the solo Olympian, deadlift. You're trying to go up and out toward God, and again, a lot of the yogis will. There's different schools, of course, of yoga, but of Ashtanga Yoga, you think of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and of the kind of the path of gradually ascending to merge into God, or to become God, or also to rid yourself of the illusion of being a separate being. And in Bhakti, we say Ashtanga Yoga, which Krishna very clearly himself says in the Gita, that it's not an easy path, and B, that there will always remain a difference between the individual soul and God. And so people who climb up into the pure light of the Brahma Jyoti and hang out in there, they can obtain a sense of being at one with the effulgent light of God. But because God is a person and not an effulgent light, God is a person, has an effulgent light. It's one of God's energies that the person can temporarily experience a sense of being at one with that God's effulgent, rays, so to speak, like basking in the sunlight, just feeling like you become a sunbeam. But ultimately, Krishna says in the Gita that people will come back down into having to be a person. You can't get rid of yourself. And in which case, that's why he ends up exalting bhakti above all, mystical paths that try to elevate and, merge basically into God. Anyway, so that's another just brief explanation. That's Ashtanga Yoga. And then there's Karma Yoga, which Srila Prabhupada camps together Ashtanga as a type of Karma Yoga. But Karma Yoga would be, for example, people doing good deeds or doing actions in the world, trying to put their heart and soul into what they're doing and try to please the gods or the demigods, or to please God, and thinking that by my good merits I'll ascend. But Krishna also warns that while this path is good, and look, if you're going to think about God and what you're doing and try to do good things in the name of God, that's a path. So are all the other paths, right? Krishna lays them all out there because there's different paths for different types of people. But Krishna says ultimately, whatever pious credits you get and whatever situation the pious credits create for you that might be very desirable, it's only still temporary. The only thing that actually lasts forever is the love that you share with me, because that'll go wherever you go. That'll be with you in the good and bad, and that'll be you can't get rid of being a being who's alive and doing things. So which realm do you want to hang out in? Do you want to come hang out with me? Because I've got some spiritual realms too. This realm is described as a realm that people come to out of forgetting their relationship, temporarily forgetting their relationship with their source. That's how it's described anyway. So Bhakti, Krishna finally says, Bhakti is the highest form of yoga and it's also the easiest. Just surrender to me. Just think of me. Just love me. Just come to me, and I'll take away your bad karma. I'll strip you of your blocks. I'll give you happiness that is uncomparable beyond merging into my white light, because you'll actually get to be my friend, and we'll get to have a real relationship, and you'll get to go on living in innumerable, infinite spiritual realms. And even if you were in this realm as a Jivan Muktan, it wouldn't be so bad, because if you have me, then this world isn't even that big of a deal. So at any rate, that's hopefully this helps as just a brief talk about the different types of yoga. But eventually I'd like to have one of my teachers and one of my mentors come on. I'd be doing more interviews in the fall, hopefully, and have some of my teachers explain some of the differences as well. So if you have any other questions, let me know. I hope this was helpful, and Hare Krishna.